Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. Tonight, let your thoughts drift like soft clouds over ancient mountains. We're returning to the timeless lands of Middle-earth, where the stars remember and old magic still stirs gently beneath the soil. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and feel the hush of twilight settle around you. In this story, an unexpected light returns to the world, carried not by swords or armies, but by a wise old wanderer and a bird born from starlight. Let the fire crackle low beside you. Let your body relax into the quiet. And come with me to a tale long forgotten by men and elves alike. This is Gandalf and the Phoenix of Light. Your journey begins now. The wind whispered gently through the ancient trees of Rivendell. Evening had come softly to the hidden valley, bathing the forested cliffs and graceful stone halls in golden twilight. The birds of day were giving their last songs, and the stars had not yet begun to shimmer. In this rare and peaceful hour, Gandalf the Grey sat in quiet contemplation upon a balcony that overlooked the silver-threaded river below. He smoked his pipe slowly, sending wisps of fragrant smoke curling into the cool air, and listened to the hush of the world as it exhaled the warmth of day and welcomed the deep breath of night. Rivendell had always been a sanctuary, a place where the troubles of the wide world seemed to pause at the borders. Though Gandalf had traveled to countless corners of Middle-earth and walked roads that few dared tread, he often returned to this valley to rest his mind and renew the flame of purpose that dwelled in him. Tonight, however, there was a restlessness he could not name. He felt it in the currents of the wind, in the patterns of the birds, and in the distant rumble of the mountains. Something old was stirring, something long forgotten. He leaned forward, peering at the horizon where the darkening sky met the peaks of the misty mountains. The sun had sunk below the ridges, yet a faint glow remained, not from the moon, which had not yet risen, nor from the stars, which waited their turn in the high canopy of night. This light was different, purer, almost silver in hue, with edges that shimmered like flame but carried none of its burn. Gandalf stood slowly, staff in hand, his eyes narrowing. The glow intensified. It drifted through the sky, descending with a grace that defied gravity, neither hurrying nor hesitating. It was then he saw it clearly, wings of pure white fire, a body cloaked in radiant gold, and long, sweeping tail feathers that left streaks of light in the air behind it. A phoenix. Gandalf's brow furrowed. Phoenixes were creatures of legend even among the oldest of the elves. They were rare beyond reckoning, believed to be spirits of fire sent by the Vala themselves, appearing only at the great turning points of history, or not at all. He had read of them in the lost scrolls of Numenor, and heard whispers from certain long ago, but he had never seen one with his own eyes. The phoenix came to rest on the balcony's stone railing, its talons glowing faintly against the gray rock. Its eyes, molten and deep like the heart of a star, met Gandalf's own without fear. The wizard did not speak, not yet. There was no need. The presence of the creature radiated understanding, and its gaze held the calm of ancient time. The air around them grew still. Even the leaves ceased their rustling, as though nature itself held its breath. The phoenix tilted its head slightly, and from its breast a soft hum began to rise. It was not a song, not quite, but something older than melody, a resonance that passed not through the ears but through the heart. Images flickered before Gandalf's mind like the memory of a dream, a vast land drowned beneath roaring seas, towers of white stone shining beneath two moons, a sky torn by war and then healed by light. These visions did not last, but they left behind the impression of grave loss and a whisper of hope. When the hum ceased, Gandalf placed a hand over his heart. "You carry echoes from a world long fallen," he said softly, unsure whether he spoke to the bird or to himself. "Why now, I wonder? Why me?" The phoenix stepped closer, its wings lifting slightly in a gesture that was neither threat nor flight. A faint sphere of golden light expanded from its chest and hovered between them. Within it swirled mist and fire, forming words that shimmered in the ancient tongue of Valinor, a language Gandalf knew well. He read the message in silence. "From the ashes of the west shall rise a light older than the stars. Seek the memory that fire could not burn. The song forgotten in the deep calls to the flame that endures. The sea has not claimed all. He who remembers must walk the path." The light faded. Gandalf stared at the spot where the message had been. He was quiet for a long while, then turned his gaze back to the phoenix. "Is it from them? The Vala?" The phoenix did not answer in words, but its wings opened wide and a gust of warm air swept over the balcony. In that breeze came the scent of long-lost lands, of lavender fields from Beleriand, of the sea-salt air of ancient haven cities, of forests that no longer stood. Gandalf's eyes glistened with the weight of memory. He knew then that this was no idle visitation. The bird bore a message not merely from the past, but from a time and place untouched by the dominion of men, elves, or even Sauron himself. The wizard turned, his mind already moving through possibilities. "Beleriand is gone beneath the sea," he murmured, speaking more to himself than to the bird. "The lands of the First Age lie in ruin. And yet, the message says not all was lost." He turned back to the phoenix. "There is something still there. Hidden. Preserved. And you've been sent to guide me." The phoenix gave a soft trill in response, neither yes nor no, but a sound of gentle affirmation. Its eyes shone brighter now, as if encouraged by Gandalf's understanding. He sighed. "I am old and weary. My steps are not as quick as they once were. But if the past calls, I must answer. Too many shadows walk the world, shadows that remember Morgoth and the old darkness. If light still flickers in the deep places, it must not be allowed to die." The phoenix flapped its wings once, sending golden sparks into the sky. With a leap, it took flight again, circling the balcony in a slow spiral. Its feathers painted the air with arcs of glowing light, like the trail of a shooting star made of sunlight. Then it soared toward the sky, not to depart, but to wait, hovering like a patient sentinel above the trees. Gandalf watched it go, then turned back into the halls of Rivendell. He would need to speak with Elrond. Maps would be required. Ancient texts would need to be consulted, some, perhaps, unread for thousands of years. And when the moon rose above the valley and bathed Rivendell in silver, Gandalf sat by a lantern in the library, quill in hand, drafting the first page of a journey long delayed, now finally beginning. Above, unseen by all but him, the phoenix remained, glowing faintly among the stars, like a fire that would not fade. Morning in Rivendell rose with the hush of dew and the softest rays of dawn light slipping between the ivy-covered stone of Elrond's house. The valley, nestled between soaring cliffs and thick forests, woke slowly, as though savoring its dreams. Elves moved lightly through the walkways and gardens, their steps like whispers, their voices hushed with the reverence of a new day. But Gandalf had not slept. Throughout the night he had sat in Elrond's library, a vast hall with domed ceilings painted in constellations older than memory. Ancient scrolls and tomes were spread across the wooden table before him, some wrapped in bindings so old they cracked with a touch. He pored over them with a focused stillness, broken only by the occasional thoughtful puff from his long pipe. The scent of oak-smoked tobacco lingered like an incense offering to knowledge. The words the phoenix had shown him hovered in his mind with the weight of prophecy. Seek the memory that fire could not burn. He repeated them silently, as if doing so would summon understanding. Elrond entered the chamber quietly, his presence calm as the wind that stirred the curtains. His long robes, embroidered with starlight and leaf, shimmered slightly in the light of morning. He looked over the scrolls Gandalf had assembled and raised an eyebrow, not in reproach, but in recognition of the gravity at hand. "You've not rested," Elrond said gently. Gandalf did not look up. There is no time for rest when the past calls with such urgency. Elrond approached, placing a hand on Gandalf's shoulder. "You speak of the phoenix." "I do." Gandalf tapped the ash from his pipe, then gestured to the center of the table where he had laid out a series of maps, some newly drawn, others faded to near illegibility. "The bird brought me a message from before the Second Age. From the time of the Great Wars. From Beleriand." Elrond's gaze turned serious. "That land has been lost to the sea for over 6,000 years. And yet not all of it," Gandalf said. "Or so it seems. There is something that survived, something buried beneath the waves or hidden beyond sight. And I believe it calls to us now." Elrond moved slowly around the table, eyes tracing the paths marked on the ancient maps. Beleriand. The once mighty western lands, where Fingolfin had challenged Morgoth himself, where the Noldor made their last great stand, where the Silmarils had gleamed like stars upon mortal brows, and where the oceans had finally claimed all. Or so they thought. What could remain? Elrond asked, more to himself than to Gandalf. That land was shattered. Cities sundered. Rivers turned to oceans. Even the great strongholds like Gondolin and Nargothrond were reduced to legend. Gandalf leaned forward, voice low. Not everything is lost. The phoenix itself is proof. Its kind was said to dwell in the far west, beyond the reach of even the Eldar. If one has returned, carrying visions of Beleriand, then something stirs. Elrond nodded slowly. And you believe this stirring is more than memory? I believe it is a warning. Gandalf's voice carried a gravity that only those who have fought true darkness could understand. There are shadows in this world that remember the First Age. The servants of Morgoth, those who crept into the cracks and caves and kept his will burning through the ages. They are slow, patient, and perhaps they have found something. Elrond's eyes darkened with thought. You speak of remnants, of spirits, or worse. Gandalf stood, taking his staff. I speak of a light hidden deep. A light older than the stars, as the phoenix's message said. Something the darkness could not destroy, though it tried. If such a light remains, and if evil knows of it, then I must find it first. The phoenix had waited outside all night, perched atop the highest arch of Rivendell like a silent sentinel. As Gandalf stepped out into the morning light, it lifted its wings slightly and gave a single note, a call that rang through the air like silver flame. Elves paused in their paths, looking up with wonder. The wizard smiled gently at the creature, then turned to Elrond, who had followed him to the steps. "I will begin in Lindon," he said. "There are still some among the Eldar who remember the songs of Beleriand, songs passed from parent to child, long after the lands themselves were gone. I'll need their memories." "I'll send word ahead to Certain," Elrond said. "He has guarded the havens since the First Age. If anyone remembers the old fires, it is he." Gandalf inclined his head gratefully. "And I will carry this message forward." As the phoenix descended beside him, folding its wings gracefully, Gandalf looked once more at the horizon. There, where the western sky kissed the sea, lay the beginning of a road not walked in millennia. The gray shores of Lindon, the last whispers of an age lost to water and time. He whispered to the phoenix, "Come, my friend. Let us walk into forgotten songs." The creature took to the air, circling above as Gandalf began his descent from Rivendell's high halls. The journey ahead would not be swift, but it would be guided by fire, not of destruction, but of remembrance. And somewhere, beyond the edge of memory, something waited. That evening, as twilight returned to Rivendell once more, Elrond stood alone on the same balcony where Gandalf had first met the phoenix. He looked westward, to the ocean, and beyond it, to the place no elf or man had seen since the world was reshaped. He closed his eyes, and in his mind, he heard the song of the sea, and something else. A spark. A single, eternal flame. Still burning. The sea wind carried a voice of ancient memory, curling through the pines and low hills of Lindon. It was a land unlike any other in Middle-earth, soft with time, heavy with age, and touched by the salt of the Western Ocean. Here, the cliffs no longer bore the eager green of youth, but had aged into a pale dignity, their stone faces looking westward, ever westward, as though waiting for a ship long overdue. Gandalf stood at the ridge above the gray havens, his cloak flaring behind him like a trailing storm cloud. The phoenix flew above in wide, thoughtful arcs, its golden light dimmed now to a muted gleam, like the last glow of a setting sun. Below them, nestled against the shore, the harbor shimmered like a dream. The havens. Mithland, the westernmost elven city in Middle-earth. Here the last ships of the Eldar had sailed, bearing the wise and the weary across the sundering seas to Aman. Here, certain the shipwright still remained, long after most of his kin had passed into the west. A guardian of farewell. A watcher at the edge of worlds. The harbor was quiet now. Only a few white ships rocked gently at anchor, their sails furled like the wings of sleeping birds. The buildings, graceful as waves carved in stone, glowed in the mid-morning light, and the air tasted of sea and silence. Gandalf made his way slowly down the path toward the docks. He had not been here in many years, not since Frodo and Bilbo had sailed. And now, returning not for farewell but for memory, he felt the ache of time in his bones more than ever. He was met by a tall elf clad in sea-gray robes, his hair silver as starlight and his eyes deep as tide-pools. Certain the shipwright bowed his head slightly, then smiled with a sadness that seemed etched into the lines of his ancient face. "Mithrandir," Certain said in a voice like distant surf, "the sea told me you were coming." Gandalf smiled faintly. The sea always knows before the wind does. They clasped hands briefly, two long-lived souls who had shared the burden of watching Middle-earth change and fracture across the ages. "You've brought something rare," Certain said, gazing upward at the phoenix now gliding above the harbor. His eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time in centuries, something like awe returned to his face. "She came to me with a message," Gandalf said. "From the first age, or before. Of something that has endured beyond the breaking of the world. A light hidden. A memory that fire could not burn." Certain turned, gesturing toward a stone pavilion at the water's edge. "Come. Let us speak where the sea listens best." They walked together beneath the high arch of the open hall, where the waves lapped gently at the smooth stone steps. A breeze passed through, carrying the soft creak of ship timbers and the whisper of gulls overhead. Gandalf lowered himself onto one of the benches carved from driftwood, the phoenix landing beside him, folding its wings with fluid grace. Its body pulsed faintly with warm light, as though hearing its name spoken in the thoughts of the elves nearby. Certain remained standing for a while, watching the bird. Then he spoke slowly, as if drawing truth from the air itself. "There was once such a creature," he said, "before even I knew the world. In the days when Morgoth still wore a crown of iron and the stars alone gave light. It flew over the battlefields of Beleriand, its flame both a balm and a warning. Some believed it was a Maya in the form of a bird. Others thought it a gift of the Vala themselves, sent to watch, to carry hope when all else failed." He looked down at Gandalf, eyes narrowed in reflection. "But it vanished. When the War of Wrath ended, and the lands were broken, the phoenix was last seen flying westward into the firestorm. None have seen it since, until now." Gandalf nodded. "She showed me a vision of Beleriand. Not as it is now, drowned beneath the waves, but as it was, green and bright, but flickering as if through smoke. She sang of a fire that could not consume a certain memory. Something hidden. Something needed." Certain paced slowly along the edge of the pavilion. There were relics lost when the land fell. Not weapons, but truths. Songs left unsung. Oaths unfulfilled. And perhaps, one light. He stopped and turned to face Gandalf directly. "Have you heard of the Eleanor?" The name was unfamiliar, even to Gandalf. He frowned slightly. "It does not appear in any song I know." "Nor would it," Certain said. "It was never forged. It was never held. It was born. A blossom of light that bloomed only once, deep in the roots of the Erdwethrin, before the Noldor ever set foot in Middle-earth. It was said to be the last gift of Varda to the world before the rise of Morgoth's darkness. Not even Fëanor could name it, though he sought its likeness." Certain's voice lowered. "It was seen by only a few. Some say Luthien saw it when she wandered into hidden glades. Others believe Turin was guided by it in his darkest hours. But it was never claimed. It lived, and then was lost, buried beneath the sea when the land sank." Gandalf stared into the sea, silent. The idea echoed the phoenix's message with chilling accuracy. A light older than stars. A memory that fire could not destroy. "And you believe it might still exist?" Gandalf asked softly. "I believe it never truly left," Certain said. "The world remembers what it cannot hold. Perhaps it sleeps, deep beneath the waters, or in the roots of mountains changed by time. Or perhaps it stirs, now, because something else seeks it." Gandalf turned to the phoenix, who gave a soft trill in response. The bird's feathers brightened subtly, as if affirming Certain's words. There is a darkness that remembers, Gandalf said. Shadows that linger even after their master was cast down. If they find it first, they will twist it, Círdan said grimly. As Morgoth twisted all that was beautiful. For a long while, the two said nothing. The waves rose and fell. A seabird called. The scent of salt hung heavy in the air. At last, Gandalf rose. Then I must go farther west, he said. Not across the sea, but along its edges. There are places where the memory of Beleriand still breathes, shattered, submerged, but not silenced. I must listen there. Círdan nodded. There is a path, though it is not marked. The sea may yet reveal what it has hidden. He reached into the folds of his robe and brought out a small crystal vial filled with liquid light that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. This is water drawn from the spring of Lorellan, saved by Galadriel before she left. It will guide you, should you lose your way in darkness. And it will remind you that some lights never fade. Gandalf took the vial with quiet reverence. Thank you, old friend. As he turned to go, the phoenix rose beside him, and Círdan watched them until they passed into the light of afternoon. The waves continued their endless whisper, as they had since the first age. And far off, beyond mortal sight, something stirred beneath the waves of a drowned land, a glimmer, a breath, a memory waiting to be found. The western shores of Middle-earth were places of quiet sorrow, where the wind carried both salt and song. Here, the land bore the memory of an age-long past, of mighty kingdoms drowned, of battles fought beneath starlit skies, of songs once sung by elves whose voices had long since faded across the sea. It was in these lands that Gandalf now traveled, the phoenix of light soaring above him like a wandering flame. His path led him beyond the gray havens, along cliffside trails overgrown with seagrass and wildflowers. The road, such as it was, dwindled quickly into rough stone and crumbling paths. Few had reason to come this way anymore, for there were no cities, no villages, no trade. Only the sound of waves crashing against broken rocks, and the endless sky that stretched westward into mist. The days passed slowly, marked by the changing winds and the rhythm of the tide. Gandalf spoke little as he walked, though at times he would murmur to the phoenix, who responded with a soft rustle of feathers or a low, melodious cry. He was listening not just to the world around him, but to the whispers beneath it. The past, in Middle-earth, was never truly gone. It lingered in stone, in root, in sea. On the 5th day of his coastal wandering, Gandalf came upon the ruins of an ancient watchtower. It stood alone on a high bluff, its stone walls worn down to little more than a circle of crumbled pillars and a half-fallen stair. But even in ruin, the tower held a strange sense of purpose, as if it had waited for someone to return. He climbed the winding steps, pausing only when the wind became too fierce to push against. At the top, he stood in silence, gazing out over the vast sea. From this height, the water seemed endless, yet somehow close, as though memory itself rode on the waves. The phoenix landed beside him, silent, its glow dim in the light of day. Gandalf closed his eyes and placed a hand on the old stone. Beneath his fingers, he felt something stir, not a voice, but an echo. A vibration of something long buried. A presence. He drew in a slow breath. I am listening, he said aloud, though there was no one but the sea to hear him. That night, he made camp at the base of the bluff. The phoenix kept watch as always, perched on a low branch of wind-blown pine. Gandalf sat before a small fire, not for warmth, he needed little, but for light. He had begun to notice that the closer he drew to the western edge of the world, the more shadow crept in. Not darkness of body, but of thought, doubt, sorrow, forgotten names whispering at the edge of his dreams. He took the vial Certain had given him and unstoppered it. The water from Morellin shimmered in the firelight, casting pale reflections on the mossy earth. As he stared into it, the reflections deepened, expanded. They became scenes, fleeting, blurred, like memories glimpsed through tears. He saw trees taller than towers, with leaves like silver stars. He saw an elven woman standing in a forest glade, singing to a bird of fire. He saw a mountain split by war, and a light falling into the sea like a single petal from a dying flower. And then, he saw a place, still and cold. A shoreline unlike any in Middle-earth, made of smooth black stone. The waves that lapped against it were silver, not blue, and they glowed faintly with some deep inner light. He blinked, and the vision vanished. "That is where I must go," he said softly, to himself and to the phoenix. The bird gave a gentle cry, low and mournful, and tilted its head as if in agreement. At dawn, they continued their journey. The path now turned downward, toward a bay half lost to overgrowth and time. Few maps marked it, for the land here was ever-changing. What had been shore in one age was now marsh, and hills had given way to cliffs that crumbled into the surf. By midday, Gandalf came upon a strange sight, a circle of standing stones, half sunken in brine and sand. They rose like fingers from the earth, carved with symbols no longer used, though Gandalf recognized their roots. They were the Sindarin tongue, but older, blended with the runes of the Falathrim, the seals of ancient Beleriand. He walked among them carefully, his staff tapping gently against the stone. The wind had stilled here. Even the phoenix seemed quieter, perching on one of the larger stones with a watchful gaze. In the center of the circle was a basin of dark water, fed by a narrow spring that ran down from the cliff above. Gandalf knelt beside it and touched the surface lightly. It was cold, far colder than the air around it. And as he looked into it, the water cleared, becoming like glass. He saw cities long buried, Iglaris, Brithambar, strongholds of the Falathrim before the wrath of Morgoth had turned the sea upon them. He saw ships of white and silver, burning. He saw light fleeing beneath the waves, deeper, deeper, beyond reach. His breath caught. It was not just memory he was seeing. It was direction. That night, he sat beside the circle of stones and listened to the sea. The phoenix remained close, wings slightly raised as though shielding him from the wind. He closed his eyes and reached deep within himself, not to summon power, but to receive it. To open himself as he once had in Valinor, when he walked not as a wizard but as Alarin, the gentle soul among the gardens of Lorien. The wind shifted, and with it came a voice. It was not words, not speech, but a presence, like the moment before dawn or the scent of old pages. It spoke through the rhythm of the surf, through the flicker of the phoenix's light. You are near. He opened his eyes. The tide had drawn back, revealing a narrow path of dark stone leading out into the sea, toward a rise of jagged rocks that had not been there before. A place hidden by the ocean's breath, now briefly revealed. He stood slowly, staff in hand. It won't remain long, he murmured. We must go now. The phoenix leapt from the stone and flew ahead, lighting the path as the waves rolled back further, as if bowing before the passage of memory. Gandalf walked, steady and sure, each step bringing him closer to what the world had tried to forget. And beneath the waves, far below, something stirred. Not asleep. Not dead. Waiting. The sea had withdrawn like a held breath, and in its absence the bones of the world were revealed. Jagged stones, slick with salt and sea moss, jutted from the sand like the ribs of some ancient leviathan. A narrow path stretched from the shore into the heart of the bay, black and wet, gleaming beneath the fading light. It was a path that should not exist, and yet it waited for him as though the land itself remembered his coming. Gandalf moved slowly, his staff tapping in rhythm with the whispering waves that now receded on either side. The phoenix flew low above him, casting flickering gold across the dark stone. With each step, the wind grew softer, the sound of the world more distant. Behind him, the cliffs and trees of the coast faded into a veil of gray mist, until only the narrow path remained, stretching into an uncertain horizon. He did not know how long he walked. Time here had thinned. The sky above was twilight now, though the sun had not set. The sea pulsed faintly with a glow not of moonlight or star, but something deeper, like the echo of light remembered by the water itself. At the path's end stood an arch of stone, half swallowed by coral and thyme. Vines of seaweed clung to it like ivy, and faint carvings lined its curve, runes too old for any tongue still spoken, yet they hummed softly beneath his fingertips. Gandalf paused, brushing his hand along the weathered symbols. They pulsed beneath his touch, not light, not sound, but presence. He stepped through. Beyond the arch, the world changed. He entered a vast cavern, half submerged beneath the sea, yet untouched by water. The air was cool and still, carrying the scent of salt and something older, dust, perhaps, or memory. Above him, the roof of the cavern shimmered with trapped starlight, as though 1,000 night skies had been gathered and frozen in the stone. Columns of white coral rose from the ground like trees of bone, curving upward into unseen heights. Pools of water lined the path ahead, mirror-like, revealing glimpses not of the ceiling but of distant places, forests long vanished, towers fallen, faces forgotten. The phoenix circled once and landed on a high ledge, its light dimmed in reverence. Gandalf stepped forward slowly, each footfall echoing louder than it should in the vast silence. At the heart of the chamber stood a pedestal of obsidian, carved from the same stone as the path that had led him here. Upon it lay a single crystal, no larger than a clenched fist. It gave off no light, no heat. It simply was, perfect and unassuming, like a drop of clear morning dew. Yet Gandalf felt it immediately. Not power, not the arrogance of forged magic, but something gentler, deeper. A harmony that resonated with every breath of air and ripple of water in the cavern. He approached slowly. As he drew near, the crystal began to glow, not with flame, but with memory. Images flickered across its surface, fleeting, translucent. He saw the 2 trees of Valinor. He saw the face of Lithien, radiant in song. He saw the fall of Gondolin, the flight of elves across ice, the march of dwarfs through stone. All of it passed like shadow through light, never staying, never settling. The light of the phoenix glowed brighter in response, as if recognizing a long-lost sibling. It let out a soft, musical note that filled the chamber like the chime of silver bells. Gandalf laid his hand gently upon the crystal. In an instant, he was elsewhere. Not in body, but in spirit. He stood in a forest of golden green, where sunlight streamed through canopies untouched by shadow. Birds sang in languages he had forgotten, and the air was thick with life, with joy. He knew this place, though not from memory. It was a vision of what once was, or what might yet be. A voice spoke, not aloud, but within. You have come, bearer of flame. Not to claim, but to remember. Gandalf stood still, listening. This light was never meant to be wielded. It is not weapon, nor tool. It is truth, born of the world before shadow. It sings of what was good, what was lost, what can still be found. He felt the words settle into him like warmth in winter. The vision shifted. Now he stood before the sea, not as it was, but as it had been before the fall of Beleriand. Tall ships sailed across it, white sails catching the wind, voices raised in song. On the shore, elves danced in the light of stars. And beyond them, hidden deep within the hills, the crystal pulsed, waiting. It had never truly left. It had hidden, yes, but not out of fear. I remain because you remember. Gandalf opened his eyes. The chamber was as it had been. The phoenix watched him, head bowed. The crystal still pulsed softly beneath his hand. He took a slow breath. This is not mine to take, he said quietly, nor to guard, only to carry lightly as a candle before the wind. He lifted his hand. The crystal floated into the air, hovering just above the pedestal. Its light deepened slightly, then steadied. The cavern, too, seemed to stir. The waters in the pools brightened. The walls shimmered with a soft, internal glow. And the air, once still, carried now the faintest note of song, wordless, ancient, and full of longing. The phoenix rose into the air and circled him once before gliding toward the exit. It was time to leave. As Gandalf passed back through the archway, the sea began to return. The tide, held back by will and memory, flowed once more into the bay. But the path remained a little longer, long enough for him to reach the safety of the cliffs, where he turned and looked back. The water swallowed the arch. The cavern, the crystal, the vision, all disappeared beneath the waves. But the light remained. Not in the sky, not in the sea. In him. He felt it now, a quiet clarity, a knowing. The crystal had not given him power. It had reminded him of what already was. Hope. The kind that fire could not burn. The kind that lived in song and silence and sacrifice. He turned from the bay and began the long climb back up the path, the phoenix soaring beside him. Ahead, the mist parted. The cliffs glowed faintly in the fading sun. And beyond them, far beyond, shadows gathered in the east. Gandalf did not smile, but he did not falter. The wind had changed. As Gandalf journeyed eastward from the sea, the salt-swept cliffs behind him and the phoenix of light gliding silently above, he felt a subtle shift in the very rhythm of the world. The air grew stiller. Not quiet, exactly, but muffled, as if the land itself was holding its breath. The sky dimmed, not from clouds or dusk, but from the thickening of the woods that now rose around him, ancient, vast, and untouched by time. He was entering the sleeping grove. Few alive remembered its name. Even in elven songs, it was barely whispered. It lay nestled beyond the borders of Menheriath, near the hills where Eriador once bloomed and withered. The forest had outlasted kingdoms and survived wars. It was said to be as old as the first music, and that its roots reached into the dreams of Arda itself. The trees here were impossibly tall, oaks and beeches, yews and ash, but none bore leaves of familiar green. Instead, they shimmered with deep silver and dusky violet, as though lit from within by starlight. Their trunks twisted in patterns that made the eye ache if studied too long. The air beneath them was heavy with fragrance, not decay, but something richer. The scent of moss, of rain that had never fallen, of memories long buried beneath bark. The phoenix flew low between the boughs, its glow muted in deference to the grove. Gandalf walked slowly, carefully, staff in hand, the crystal light he carried pulsing faintly from beneath his robes. It did not shine here as it had in the vault beneath the sea. It pulsed like a heartbeat, attuned to the grove's slumber. For the forest was not dead, nor dormant. It slept deeply, endlessly, and something within it dreamed. He passed beneath an arch of roots as wide as a hall, where ivy writhed lazily like slow-moving serpents. The path went onward, yet it was not a trail in the usual sense. It shifted, subtly, as though the forest shaped itself around him, guiding rather than resisting. A soft voice brushed against his thoughts, not speech, but impression. Welcome, again. He stopped. Again? The phoenix perched upon a branch nearby, tilting its head with a soft trill. Gandalf frowned slightly. You've been here before, he said to himself, or perhaps to the forest. Not as I am now, but yes, I think I have. He touched the nearest tree gently, and the bark warmed beneath his hand. A memory flickered behind his eyes, fleeting, vague. A flash of light, a child's laugh, a silver pool among moonlit ferns. Olorin. That had been his name in the West. Before he became Gandalf. Before the world burdened him with crowns of worry and titles he had never asked for. Back then, he had walked this grove not with staff and cloak, but in robes of soft gray, no older than the wind. He had come to learn, to listen, to be still. Old friends, he whispered, and a breeze rustled through the high branches in answer. He continued deeper. The trees grew taller, denser. No birds sang here. No animals scurried. Yet there was no fear, no threat. Only the steady sensation of being watched, not in malice, but in patience. The grove was aware, and it remembered. At length, he came upon a clearing where the canopy thinned, letting in a shaft of pale silver light, though no moon was visible in the sky above. In the center of the glade stood a single tree far larger than any Gandalf had ever seen. Its bark was the color of old pearl, and its limbs rose in spirals like a tower built of light. Its leaves were long and narrow, like the feathers of a swan, and they shimmered faintly with a blue-green hue. At its base grew a circle of white flowers, dozens of them, all closed tightly as if still waiting for spring. A small stream trickled beside the roots, its water impossibly clear, flowing without source or end. The moment Gandalf entered the glade, he felt something shift. It was like stepping into the past, not a specific moment, but the shape of it. The memory of peace, of trust. He knelt beside the tree and placed both hands on the earth. Old one, he said gently, I seek that which was buried in the wake of loss. a light forgotten, hidden in sorrow. I do not come to awaken you, only to ask for guidance." There was silence. Then the earth beneath his fingers stirred, not shaking, but responding. The flowers opened. All at once, in silence, each blossom bloomed with a soft sound like a sigh. Their petals glowed faintly, not with fire, but with memory. Scenes flickered within each one, like the reflections in Morellan's waters. Children laughing in the arms of elven mothers. Dwarves singing songs of stone by candlelight. Hobbits dancing beneath lanterns in a green elm meadow. All the small joys of a world that often forgot how to hope. In the air above the tree, a shimmer appeared, like a veil pulling back. And through it stepped a figure. She was tall and ageless, with hair like woven starlight and eyes that reflected the forest itself. She wore no crown, no ornaments. Only a robe of deep green and twilight silver. Her face bore neither smile nor frown, but something gentler, a quiet recognition. "Alarin," she said. He bowed his head. "Lady," he murmured. "You remain." "I sleep," she replied, "as does the forest. But the world breathes once more, and the light you carry stirs the dreams of many." He looked up into her eyes. "Tell me," he said, "what is this light? Why has it come now?" The lady of the grove tilted her head. "Because shadow grows stronger. Not through armies, nor fire, but through forgetting, through despair. This light is not a weapon, Mithrander. It is a seed, a song, a flame of memory. It cannot defeat the dark, but it can remind the world why it must resist." Gandalf nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "It is hope." "Yes," she said. "Hope born from love, not might. From memory, not command." He felt the crystal pulse again at his chest. The lady stepped closer. "You will carry it farther still. But you are not alone." She looked to the phoenix, who now perched upon a branch directly above her, glowing brighter than ever. It, too, remembers. Its song once kept sorrow at bay in the darkest places. It was born of the light you now bear. But it was sundered from it long ago. Gandalf turned to the bird. "Then we are both seeking what was lost." The phoenix let out a soft, harmonious cry. The lady began to fade, becoming one with the silver light of the tree. "Go east," she said, "to the place where the stars fall into the earth. There, the light will face its greatest test." And with that, she vanished, leaving behind only the hush of the grove and the distant trickle of the stream. Gandalf rose slowly, his heart quiet, full. The flowers had closed once more, but he knew their song lingered in him. He bowed to the great tree, and as he stepped back, the path behind him shifted once more, leading eastward through silver dusk. The phoenix soared ahead, and the forest exhaled softly as it let him go. The grove slept on, but it dreamed no longer alone. The road beyond the sleeping grove did not follow the maps of men. It curved where logic said it should run straight and dipped into valleys that did not appear on any parchment. The stars above were strange, older somehow, brighter and colder than those Gandalf knew. Yet they guided him more surely than any compass. Their light did not fall from the sky, it called, softly, to the crystal in his chest. He followed. The phoenix had grown quieter. It no longer sang, but occasionally let out a low hum, vibrations that echoed through the still air, as though testing the boundaries of the world around them. Gandalf could sense it too. The very fabric of the land seemed thin here. Each step forward felt like moving not just across distance, but between the threads of time itself. The hills grew steeper, the ground more barren. Grass gave way to pale stone. Trees faded until only stumps remained, ancient and petrified, as if caught mid-breath by some unseen force. The air smelled faintly of ash and iron, but beneath it lingered a sweetness, like the last note of a harp long stilled. On the third night of this journey, he came to the edge of a high cliff. Below him lay a valley unlike any he had seen before. It was not vast, but it felt immense, as if it contained more space than it should. Its walls were made of sheer, crystalline stone that shimmered like glass, and at its center lay a wide, still lake. But the lake did not reflect the sky above. Instead, it held its own stars within, burning softly beneath the surface. This was the Vale of Eleanor, the Valley of Falling Stars. He had heard it once, in the whispers of the elves, spoken in reverent tones, as a place not on any map but carried in the oldest songs. It was said to be where fragments of Arendel's light had fallen to the world, caught in a rain of celestial tears during the First Age, before even the breaking of Thangorodrim. None had seen it since. And yet, here it lay, untouched, unmoving, waiting. The phoenix descended first, landing on a rocky outcrop that jutted into the air like the prow of a ship. Its feathers glowed softly, harmonizing with the light below. Gandalf followed, slowly, reverently. The stone beneath his feet vibrated faintly, not with instability but with anticipation. As he reached the edge of the lake, the light of the crystal within him surged, and the stars beneath the water stirred. One by one, pinpricks of light rose from the depths, like bubbles ascending in slow grace. They hovered above the surface, shedding no heat but illuminating the valley in a glow that made the air feel both old and newborn. Gandalf knelt by the water's edge and touched the surface. It rippled. And then, a voice spoke. Not in Westron, nor in Quenya or Sindarin, but in the language of light itself, a language only remembered in music and dreams. Bearer of the flame rekindled, why do you come? Gandalf did not reply with words, for words would not suffice. He opened his thoughts, his memories, his purpose, and let the light read him as a river reads the shape of the land it passes through. The voice returned. You carry what was once ours. Lost to time, buried by sorrow. It returns not as fire, but as seed. He bowed his head. Then I have come to return it, he whispered. Or to awaken it, if it will rise again. The stars flared. From the lake emerged a figure of light, formed not from matter but from memory, a silhouette of tall grace, neither male nor female, clothed in robes of the night sky. Eyes like twin galaxies regarded him with sorrow and wonder. You are not the first to carry the light, the figure said, but you may be the last. The phoenix cried out, a soft, high call full of longing. The figure turned its gaze to the bird. Child of flame, do you remember your name? The phoenix glowed fiercely, and in that moment, Gandalf saw. He saw the day the phoenix was born, from the first ember of the starfire that fell into the lake. It had risen not from egg or nest, but from song, a harmony woven between sky and stone. It had been a guardian once, a singer of peace in the darkest hours of the world. But in the war of wrath, When the heavens cracked and Morgoth was cast out, the valley had been forgotten, and the phoenix had flown alone for ages beyond counting. Its name had been lost. Until now. The figure turned back to Gandalf. There is one who would silence this life forever. He stirs in the east, hidden still but watching. He fears what you carry, not for its strength, but for what it awakens in others. Gandalf nodded grimly. Hope. Yes. The stars above the lake began to move. They spiraled slowly in the sky, forming a pattern that echoed the symbol engraved on the crystal surface. The crystal glowed brighter, pulsing in time with the phoenix's light. Then the figure spoke a final time. Take this gift, flame bearer. The last memory of the first light. Let it awaken the forgotten songs in the hearts of all free folk. With that, a single star fell from the sky, not fast, not burning, but drifting gently like a feather. It settled into the phoenix. There was a flare of light so bright that Gandalf closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the valley was quiet. The figure had gone. The stars beneath the lake were still once more. But the phoenix had changed. Its feathers shimmered now with the hues of dawn and starlight, deep violet at the wingtips, gold at the heart, and a soft blue radiance that pulsed with every beat. In its eyes burned a memory, ancient and whole. It had remembered. Gandalf smiled. You know your name again. The phoenix bowed its head. He rose and looked once more upon the valley. It had not faded, not vanished. But it had become still, like a story that had finally been spoken aloud and could now rest. He turned eastward. The path was clearer now, not easier, but known. The next step would lead him into shadow again, where doubt and fear lingered. But he would not go alone. And he would not go empty. As he and the phoenix departed the Vale of Eleanor, a wind rose behind them, soft and steady. The stars above resumed their silent watch, and in the quiet, the world seemed, for just a moment, to believe in its own healing. Dawn was breaking as Gandalf crossed the final ridge. The sun had not yet crested the horizon, but its presence was felt, a slow unfurling of warmth behind the mountains, a promise written in gold and fire. The sky ahead turned from violet to soft rose, brushing the clouds with the gentle hand of morning. And still, the world was quiet, as though it, too, was watching and waiting. The phoenix flew beside him in silence, its wings barely disturbing the air. It no longer blazed with the frantic light of a creature lost, but carried itself with calm grace. Its glow had changed, not brighter, not dimmer, but deeper. There was memory in its fire now, and purpose. Together, they descended into the eastern valley where the hills met the plains and where shadow once gathered. The land here bore the marks of a forgotten war. Stones lay shattered as if broken by ancient weapons. Trees were charred, their blackened trunks like scorched fingers reaching skyward. Even the soil had a weariness to it, as if it had endured too many seasons of silence. Here, once, a tower had stood, a citadel raised in secret by one of Sauron's lost lieutenants, long after the Dark Lord's fall. It had not been large or grand, but it had been cunningly built, hidden from the eyes of men and elves, fed by whispers and despair. It had drawn to it those whose hearts had grown cold, those who remembered not light, but only the quiet comfort of fear. But now the tower was gone, shattered by time, by abandonment, or perhaps by the will of the land itself. Only its foundation remained, a broken circle of stone overgrown with moss and thorn. It was here that Gandalf stopped. "This is the place," he murmured, gazing around with quiet eyes. "The heart of forgetting." The phoenix landed upon one of the broken stones and looked at him, waiting. Gandalf knelt upon the ground and placed his staff before him. From within his robes he drew the crystal, a small thing, no larger than a child's fist. It pulsed softly with inner light, like the last ember of a hearth before morning. He held it aloft, and the phoenix let out a long, harmonious note. The sound did not echo. It did not need to. It sank into the stones, into the earth, into the silence itself. And the silence answered. A breeze stirred, no more than a sigh, but it carried with it a change. The thorns that had once coiled protectively around the ruins began to wither. The moss brightened. Small shoots of green sprouted from cracks in the stone. The land was remembering. Gandalf stood. "The crystal cannot banish the darkness," he said softly. "But it can remind the world that the darkness was never all." He placed the crystal into the center of the ruined foundation. The stone beneath it shimmered faintly, and a pattern appeared, an old sigil, one older than Gondor, older even than Beleriand. It was a spiral made of 7 stars, circling inward toward a single flame. The sigil of the first light. The phoenix stepped forward and lowered its head. A single feather, glowing with blue and gold light, drifted from its wing and fell into the heart of the spiral. At once, the crystal ignited, not violently, not blindingly, but with a slow, steady brilliance. It did not burn. It grew. From a flicker into a beacon. From a beacon into a presence. And in that light, something stirred. From the corners of the valley, faint shapes emerged. Not shadows, not ghosts, but echoes. The memories of those who had once lived here, men and elves, dwarves and hobbits. Faces both noble and plain, old and young, all carried forward by the gentle light. They did not speak. They did not cry. They remembered. The darkness that had once filled this place receded like mist beneath the sun. Not destroyed, but accepted, folded into memory, given its place in the long tale of the world without being allowed to own it. Gandalf looked to the phoenix. "This was your purpose," he said. "Not to defeat darkness, but to sing to what it had silenced." The phoenix bowed its head, and for the first time since their journey began, tears shone in Gandalf's eyes. The echoes faded with the rising sun, not banished, but released. The crystal now glowed steadily from the heart of the valley, no longer merely a relic, but a living reminder. A place where weary hearts might come and remember joy. A place where the light had not died. He remained there for a time, how long, he could not say. The phoenix curled beside him like a sleeping fire, its body warm and rhythmic with quiet peace. Birds had begun to return, shyly at first, then in flocks. Grass grew, slow but sure. The valley healed. When at last he rose, the world had changed. Not in grand ways. There were still kings and wars, still hearts filled with fear and greed. But something quiet had awakened. A memory passed from bird to tree, from wind to stream. A story that would not be written in tomes, but sung in lullabies and carved in forgotten doorposts. The phoenix of light remained, not as a guardian, not as a symbol, but as a companion of the world. It flew again across Middle-earth, unseen by most, but felt in every dawn that seemed warmer than it should be, in every child's laugh that came without cause. And Gandalf, though his journey here was done, carried this song within him. He returned westward in time, not with fanfare or tales. He did not speak of the valley or the light. He did not need to. Instead, he walked the roads of the world as he always had, quietly, watching, listening, encouraging small kindnesses, leaving behind the scent of pipe smoke and the sound of laughter. And those who met him felt something stir within them, not a command, but a memory, of firelight and songs, of stars glimpsed from hillsides, of something forgotten but never lost. Long after the wizard was gone, long after the last ship sailed into the west, the valley remained. Trees now grew where once there had been ruin. A quiet pool still held the reflection of stars, even on moonless nights. And at its heart, the crystal glowed. Sometimes, travelers would find it, lost wanderers, children with too much sorrow, old warriors with heavy hearts. They would come upon it as if by accident, and sit a while in its light. And when they left, something within them was lighter. They did not always understand why, but they remembered. And the phoenix watched, always, above the clouds, between the stars. Thank you for joining me tonight in this gentle journey through Middle-earth. May the light of the phoenix linger in your heart, and the quiet strength of Gandalf's path guide your dreams. As the stars settle overhead and your eyes grow heavier, know that the story doesn't truly end, it simply rests, waiting for you in the hush of the night. Let the stillness wrap around you like a warm blanket. Let your breath slow. You are safe. You are held. You are home. Sleep well, dear traveler. And until we meet again, may peace be your companion.